Let's go. Do this.
Okay, this is episode 2 on the Real Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame's Facebook pages. Myth busting on misconceptions of pro wrestling. Whatever. Just I know.
Facebook is so gay.
I know. I'm just using it as a forum to get to people.
No, I know.
Because all the spreaded morons spreading all their WWE crap,
all their
lies. You know.
Bon Jovi.
like your Shane old bitch. Spreading all the lies and everything, and so I want to kill the viruses.
I'm not sorry.
All right, and so I wanted to cover because we talked. All right, topic 1 talked about how WCW stole WF stars, which was clearly the opposite.
I like how it was the complete opposite too.
Yeah, it was ironically the complete opposite.
It wasn't no that they don't. It was
they took on. Yeah,
That's what made it.
Yeah. And how Vince could really manipulate people.
Dude, he's a cock block.
He's a very good con man.
He's a very good cock block.
Okay, so we're going to hit topic number 2. These are just ones I really wanted to cover.
Finally.
Topic number 2 is WCW never pushed anyone. They say that they took the WF guys, what do they say? And then they just wore rags, brought out, they never pushed anyone.
We can literally say nothing and still prove a point. Because if we already proved that they didn't steal anyone, then they obviously pushed everyone.
Right.
That they did
steal. We're not gonna go with Bill Watts WC. We're gonna go with the Bischoff era WCW when he brought it to.
All right.
You know, 95 to 99. They say, you know, or 2001. You know.
Here's what they say.
We're gonna go.
They like to say, the only guy they pushed was Hogan.
Or no, the only star they made was Goldberg. No, that's what they say. Now let me read this little thing I wrote, and then we'll go from this. Okay. WCW never pushed anyone. False. People have a misconception of what a push is. Okay? A world title is not the only way to get a push. Or an intercontinental title, because we all know that the mid-card titles, like the IC title and, say, the US, means you're working your way up to the world title if you get that.
It used to mean that.
Now it's complete chaos.
No. Even like then. It was like that in the 80s.
Yeah.
But really in the 90s, it was just kind of like random.
If they didn't want you to be their main guy like their Rock or something, you'd have the Intercontinental, like, to show that, hey, you're a main guy, you're just not going to be the face of the company.
You know, because, like, Albert got it.
Yeah.
Right?
And,
like, okay?
Yeah, that whole they were just kind of just giving it to everyone to throw them a title.
Yeah, throw them a bone, like. But I mean, it used to be like, all right, like with the Ultimate Warrior, like they gave him the Intercontinental.
Because he was eventually going to be the world. Yeah. Shawn Michaels. IC to the
Bret
world.
Hart.
Yeah, that's how they did it. That was how you knew.
They gave it to like. And when you give it to like Albert, like, what is wrong with you, man? Unless you just give him a title, and that's different.
Yeah, but okay.
Or you
so let me read this. Okay.
Raven.
A world title is not the only way to push somebody. The world title is like the Academy Award. This is what Mick Foley uses his metaphor in his book. It's like
winning the Super Bowl. Like,
it's the Academy Award where it says that it's placed in honor on the person that will be, the face of the company. That for merchandise selling, they're the face of the brand. It's a brand. You know what I mean?
That's right,
Vince McMahon is all about just getting the kids when they're young, selling the merchandise, making the brand. It's not about making a good adult show or no show. He just makes merchandise. He lives off the bullshit merchandise. He makes... So...
There's so many people that question. To where this is a ridiculous question.
Yeah.
So
not everyone could get the world title because you're supposed to be the face and run the company. So WWE in 97, 98, who was always it? Austin. Undertaker could never beat Austin.
Apparently,
Rock, Austin, Triple H.
Apparently, the Devil cannot beat some guy from Texas.
Yeah, you gotta remember, Undertaker for the longest time was only like a 3-time world champion. Remember, he never would get it. Remember, until they gave it to him in 99. Finally, after all that. After 97, he beat Sid Vicious at WrestleMania, but there was like a 2-year... remember it was Austin, Rock, them 3, that's it. So world titles have nothing to do with being pushed. You could say the same thing about WWF. About WCW, okay.
But at least, with WCW, there was a reason why Hogan had to cheat all the time to win it, and there was
it was to make the NWA.
See what the WWF was just like. No one could beat Austin because apparently he's just badass. He can't be pinned or something.
But with WCW, there was now let me read this again. This is what I wrote to help us. Okay, so I said it's for marketing, and not everyone could get it or it wouldn't be special. It can't be a whore. Like the hardcore title, if everybody just keeps getting the world title constantly. Okay, look at the W title now. Cena's like up to what number?
Cena is a okay. I can tell you right now. Cena is he's a 3-time world heavyweight champion.
Well, let's go off the W championship.
And on top of that, he's like a 13-time WWE.
Now,
champion.
see,
he's not even 34.
Yeah. Now, Ric Flair was supposed to be the only one to get to that, and that's what made Ric Flair's character special. But now, if Randy Orton has like over double-digit, Edge was only a main eventer since 05 to 10. So that's 5 years to have 13 title. That's ridiculous.
The other day I looked up, the world heavyweight title, because they were combining, so I was just looking up the one person who had it the most out of anyone, Edge, 13 times.
Yeah, and he was only a main eventer.
05 to 06.
Yeah, 06.
Actually, he didn't get to 07 because he had the WWE title in 06.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's like 07 to like.
Now, what took Ric Flair all them years and made it special, these guys like Orton, Cena, Triple H, they get it all enough because they have no storylines. Yeah, they just keep shoving the belt like that was that good either.
Gotta give somebody the title.
Now is that good either? Okay, so I wrote this little note. Okay, look at, he has a title like, I just threw out a number like 13 times. It's like a double-digit number, which is ridiculous. It was supposed to be if you had 3, like Bret Hart. 4. It was like, whoa, like...
Oh man, that's way too much time.
Yeah.
13, are you kidding me?
Okay. So that just shows that they don't push anybody else, except Orton down your throat, seeing a couple guys that have the, Okay, and they have no storyline because the storylines made the show, and the storylines you wouldn't need a belt because you're becoming a main star. Because remember, the wrestling is a TV show, correct? So if you're given a big major storyline on national TV, you're a big part in a face of the company. Or if you're given a group. People say in WCW, okay, here's what we're talking about, how no one was pushed. Eddie Guerrero was given the Latino World Order. He was given this whole faction to lead, and all these people to lead the Cruiserweights and the Luchadors against the NWO and against WCW. To be the face of that, you don't get a major storyline like that in a major faction, a group. Raven, if you're annoying, Raven, he doesn't have to be given the world title. He was given the flock. He was given the flock in WCW. He was given he was given Raven's rules where he could do any matches he wants. They were given all this airtime, and that's not...
While you were doing the flock, going on, you had Saturn breaking away from the flock, so that was pushing him.
There was a storyline.
As you were pushing Raven, you were pushing Saturn.
And Kidman. Do you remember Kidman? Kidman was the dirty kid in the flock who scratched him. He was dirty. He broke away from the flock and became a major mid-card star with the Cruiser with the Cruiserweight title.
Feuds with Hogan.
He feuded with Hogan in 2000, and And so all these, you do a storyline. That's what makes a character big and memorable. How you remember them, not a world title. Okay. You know how many world champions are that nobody remembers? Jack Swagger had a world title reign, and nobody even cares because it didn't matter. It's the show. It's the show that builds the guy. So all these people say these guys weren't pushed. Eddie Guerrero was pushed. Remember his feud with Chavo, where he was the evil uncle, and he manipulated Chavo to be his bitch, basically. Remember, he made him wear the shirt. Eddie Guerrero's my favorite wrestler. Remember that whole time where Chavo pretended to go crazy to get back under Eddie's skin. To get it now, reverse shift the power to Chavo. Remember, he pretended to lose his mind, and he had Pepe, the wooden horse, and he walked out. That was major airtime. Everybody remembers Chavo and Eddie for that. You don't have to have a world title.
You can look at it. All right, what's more memorable? Edge's 11 title reigns or Disco Inferno?
Disco Inferno, all those mid-card guys. Okay, everyone says WCW didn't make anyone. Everyone remembers Disco Inferno, just like Val Venus. Did Val Venus ever get a world title reign?
No.
Oh, but you know Val Venus, you know D'Lo Brown, you know Al Snow.
Gangrel.
Just like in WCW. You know Disco Inferno, you know Conan from in the NWO, the Filthy Animals. He brought the hip-hop culture, the Filthy Animals. Rey Mysterio Jr., when he lost his mask and made him more marketable to women and everything, because he was a pretty-looking guy, and he became this big star, and he feuded with Nash. That got him national exposure to lose the title. Remember that? So how could you say these guys aren't built? Okay, Chris Jericho feuded with Goldberg. He got all that airtime as the conspiracy victim with Dean Malenko on the Cruiserweight belt. He got like 20 minutes of airtime every time, and he claims that he was not pushed or anything because that's not fair. He just
actually,
it's very biased to WWE.
To be honest with you, he got more of a push than anyone fucking there.
Jericho got a
fucking shove, man.
Yeah.
They just like threw him.
It's just that he grew up a WWF fan as a kid, and
so to him, in his brain, a push is
the WWF
title.
So all these guys are pretty much greedy on these things that don't matter.
Like you said, when you're running a wrestling company, you're dealing with egos.
Just Bischoff's always the fall guy for everyone to just say, but he's the one who made them all stars. Okay, because here's another thing I want to say. People always say WCW didn't make any new guys except Goldberg. Are you kidding me?
Have you heard of the power plant? Because I have.
Okay, but not only that. Let me say this. Okay, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, they were all the young kids and lions in that time. Okay. Jerichoholics, Chris Jericho, feud with Goldberg, all that.
2000.
Big
title reign.
We're talking on WCW. Chris Jericho got all that airtime. Chris Benoit in the Horsemen with Dean Malenko, all that airtime. Those are all your young talent. WCW didn't need to make. Those are the new guys. That's their new talent.
People are always gonna remember like the feud with Chris Benoit and Kevin Sullivan.
Yeah, over a woman.
Over a woman. Yeah, over a woman. Like who's gonna forget that?
Yeah, because it was based off real thing, you know. But what I'm trying to say is, like I said a minute ago. Okay, Chris Jericho, Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero, all them guys, Ray Jr., Psychosis, they are the young talent at that time. So that is WCW's young talent they were building. It's not Bischoff's fault that Eddie Guerrero gets in that car accident and misses all of '99. When he gave him the faction, the whole thing fell apart, and then he bails. He puts him again in the group, the Filthy Animals. Again, a giant push. They bail.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
He bail. It's not his fault if he gets and they bail. The Revolution. Shane Douglas, Perry Saturn, Dean Malenko, Chris Benoit. They all bailed when they were getting a major push against against Ric Flair and against all the old. You know, they did millions of storylines pushing these guys, and that is not fair. Chris Benoit even got the world title and sold out. January 2000, and he decided to leave, and they did the Radicals, which is a ripoff of the Revolution. Same thing.
Without Shane Douglas.
Without Shane. No, it's the same exact thing. So that's not fair. It is completely misinformation.
Actually, everybody got a fucking push.
Because they say Goldberg was the only new guy. Chris Jericho and all them guys were new guys because everyone says, oh, they're in ECW. ECW was never seen by the majority of people. It wasn't on national TV. You didn't know who any of these people are. Eric Bischoff made them to the national TV.
Yeah, but if
household name.
No, the way WWF arrogant fans talk is if you're not in the WWF, you're new.
Yeah.
So then, even if they were in ECW, it doesn't matter.
What did WWF do in 2000 except or 99 when they took Jericho, they took Malenko?
I'm gonna tell you right now.
And they just did the exact same things with them. Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Did Dean ever get a world title? No, they made him into a rapist with Lita. Remember, he's going after Lita. They ruined his credibility. Wasn't that what they did? Okay. How was that any better than what like?
Or they just you know what he was doing? He was wrestling the light heavyweight title. Sounds a lot like the cruiserweight title to me.
Yeah, it's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
That's not fair.
Less of the talent.
Okay, Chris Jericho, he was getting this major push feuding with Bill Goldberg. What does he do when he first comes in? Ken Shamrock. Same exact storyline. He had Relfist, then Howard Finkel became the Relfist. It's the exact same thing. Let's go to this video, actually, of Chris Jericho feuding with Goldberg, getting all this national TV exposure. There's Relfist, Jericho's personal security. You could see that he's the same character that WWF stole and made Y2J.
You can't seem to find the ring, though.
Yeah. Okay. Now, this is the exact same thing WWF just took in '99 when he was already a household name. They just made the Y2J moniker.
Instead of line.
Just to sell merchandise. Yeah, that's it. He didn't make it. How is all this airtime, feuding with Goldberg, not good enough? Jericho is...
He also took, He took Hoovie's mask off too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Take a luchador's mask off, that's a big deal.
He got so much airtime with the television town, the cruiserweight town, and everything.
How about that thing he used to do? Remember
just
what he did, like, remember that we were watching the one they went there, he's making fun of all the luchadors?
Yeah.
He's like speaking
I just don't understand that he got all this airtime every week, and it wasn't good enough for me.
Yo, even if they gave him the WCW title, it still wouldn't have been enough.
He just always was biased to WF because that's what he liked as a kid, and he said Bischoff wasn't, because Bischoff didn't wear a suit, he wasn't as professional as Vince McMahon. What does wearing a suit have to do with anything? You know, like that, how much of a snob he is to say that? That's very unfair of Chris Jericho, because I'm a big fan of him, but he's wrong. And he's going on these DVDs and saying misinformation. This is the same thing that WWF did with him. Do you remember, what did WWF do with him in 99-2000? All they did was just redo these things, these same feuds, and then the end of 2001, when WCW was already gone to give him the world title, remember? It took 2 years, which would have took as long in WCW anyway, wouldn't it?
Yeah, he could get it.
So what's the difference?
Maybe even earlier.
Yeah, okay. And they had him beat Steve Austin and The Rock in one night, but they made him cheat and look like a fool to win anyway, so it's not like they really made him credible. Okay. So, whatever, his goofy entry, because that's the character. He's funny, he can't find the ring. You know.
The lights aren't big enough for him.
Yeah, same thing. So, everyone has been misinformed by WWE. Okay, whatever, you get the point, and he's feuded Goldberg at this point. He did this funny thing where the fake Goldberg comes out, which WWE will later rip off when they make Gilbert. So they WCW already did everything.
Holy shit, they even ripped that off, man. Wow.
Every little thing WWE ripped off later on.
Ripped off just making fun of Goldberg.
Yeah. Okay, so there's him. Now here's Jericho feuding with Ken Shamrock. There's Howard Finkel, just like he had Ralph before that. Same exact storyline. Goldberg and Ken Shamrock are two of the tough badass, same thing. Quiet badass.
The ire of the world's most dangerous man, Ken Shamrock, who to say the least,
just not
very close to snapping.
Okay. Now, one more. Here's Rey Mysterio Jr. Without the mask, and he was a big, popular star with the girls. And how big,
You know what? I think you should go out with us one night. We'll take very good care of you. We'll roll you up and down the club. Have a blast.
You know what I need to do is I need to go shopping with your haberdasher and kind of bring myself up to
all the airtime in the world is like good enough. It's unfair.
I can do that. Oh, what you Can I ask you about one thing that certainly has stimulated my interest? Recently, I saw a very interesting scenario, and it involves a lovely but...
Okay, well, you get the point. My tape is... Okay, I'm going to go back to this after. But, okay, so that just proves the point that it's completely biased because WWF never pushed anybody. They did the exact same thing. It's just that Bischoff is the fall guy and they blame him for it's the same thing.
Blame it on Bischoff.
I don't understand that. Okay, now let me read one more thing to you that I wrote here on this. Okay, where did I leave off? Okay, I said, see, Bischoff's WCW, he made it into a drama soap opera show, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay, before that, what did WWF look like? It had your little interview with Mean Gene or your little promo before the match. You had no actual storylines like a TV show, like you thought it was real.
You had your job fest.
Okay.
You got a job match.
Okay.
That was pretty much it.
So Bischoff made it a TV show. And that's going to make storylines. So people always say, oh, they only made Hogan and he hogged the belt. But isn't that the whole point with the NWO takeover? Because people don't realize the NWO...
If they don't have the world title, they have no credibility.
Exactly. And he had to reign supreme for like a year, just like a Hitler taking over. So, okay, so let me read this. Soap opera show. And he built up long stories like a show. Example, Sting Hogan. Hogan had to have the title for a year on his reign of destruction. So built up to win Sting, who is the Crow character, like if you've seen the movie The Crow, right? He represents WCW. He's like WCW's guardian angel. So he's in the Raptors. He's in the Raptors watching as Hogan reigns as supreme. He's waiting for the perfect day to come back. It's called build-up. So when you finally have the match, it's epic.
Let's talk about...
Just like when you watch a movie. What's the ending fight? But you have the whole build-up of the story.
Let's talk about what's more special, right? Was it more special when Daniel Bryan beat Cena for the title?
Which was just rushed and thrown together?
Or was it more special when Lex Luger on that Nitro?
On Nitro. After Hogan held the belt for a year. He shocked everyone.
Shocked everyone and pulled out. He beat him. And it was got the.
It's more exciting.
How exciting was the crowd?
It's more exciting when you build up something dramatically. And that took a year. How are you going to give 50 guys...
Granted, he only had it for a week, but that
was it, though. That was the whole thing. You gotta remember.
Just so you guys know, we're going on 20 minutes.
Okay, well, I want to get everything out, so as long as everyone's good. Okay, so let me say this. The NWO, everybody makes mistakes, because you have so many people that watch the DVDs now and all these young kids that WWE's brainwashing now to make WCW look bad. They don't realize the NWO was not a faction. The NWO was a promotion. The whole gimmick of the NWO was
NWO WCW.
The New World Order. It was a promotion. Okay? Bischoff. See, Vince McMahon ripped off the evil boss thing. Eric Bischoff was the WCW guy who was the president of WCW, and he turned on him to join the NWO, and he was that evil boss that took over.
Yeah, when he was
so Vince actually stole that with the corporation and all that. Everything's a rip-off later on of his writing. And that's unfair. Okay, so Bischoff was your evil boss. Bischoff made the competition for the WCW because WWF wasn't competition at that time. For 2 years, WWE wasn't competition. It was, they didn't have anything.
Under the mat.
So New World Order was the other company, just like they made the sold-out pay-per-view. That was, NWO was sold out.
It started with the three of them and ended with, 99% of the WCW wrestlers. No, I'm just kidding.
Probably.
But it was it was a good bunch, though.
But it was a promotion, so you have to have more.
You get away with that.
See, what people don't realize that it's not a faction. They're like, oh, they put in all these guys and watered it down. No, you need your lackeys because Hogan thinks he's the god of wrestling. That was his whole thing. He's a heel. He's a scumbag. He needs his minions to kiss his ass. That was the whole thing. And then eventually. The whole plot, Eric Bischoff's whole plan was, why do you think he made the Wolfpack with Kevin Nash? Remember, it was breaking apart. The egos were killing each other from the inside, and it was going to die. But, see, the people don't understand, you need patience. It's the whole story developing. You understand?
The actual plans were definitely, before even the new millennia, and then WWO's would be gone.
Well, the problem is that Bischoff...
got fired.
He didn't get fired. He walked out because Ted Turner... He owned WCW, and he gave Bischoff full reign. As the president, Bischoff revolutionized wrestling. He made the NWO. He brought in the smaller wrestlers because Vince never wanted the smaller wrestlers. Chris Jericho will not give any credit to Eric Bischoff, but if it wasn't for Eric Bischoff, all of them guys wouldn't be on national TV. Because Vince didn't like the small wrestlers. He only liked big bodies like Luger. Watch any 80s to 90s. Watch before Bischoff. There were no small wrestlers on national TV. You didn't see it. Only Shawn, who was a novelty. He was supposed to be the only one. Get it? That's the gimmick. Just like now, there's only Ray Jr. He's a novelty. He's a gimmick. Only one. See, Vince does cartoon characters. Only one. There can't be more than one. See? So... Jericho, none of them guys would even ever make it. Mick Foley was turned down 1,000 times by WWF because he didn't have their muscle, clean look, and he looked like a bum. To Vince. He's, because he had the beard and he was grungy and hardcore. So what they don't realize is that they only got jobs because WCW was beating them, and they had no choice but to take them leftovers. That's the truth, and that's the sad part.
Hard truth.
Yeah. And, okay. And so I don't like all these misconceptions. That's why this is so important for me too.
You gotta cut out the bullshit.
Break off all these misconceptions.
Gauge package.
Okay, what time are we on?
23 minutes.
23 minutes. Okay, so the NWO was supposed to be the promotion and the competition. Okay, and they were supposed to kill each other from the inside. Nash, his ego, and Hogan, they weren't getting along. And, their ego started to well, who's really running this, right? So then he makes the Wolfpack and he breaks away and the whole thing. All that. That's what people need to realize is that the people that are complaining about WCW saying it's a bunch of crap and it doesn't make any... You have to have patience. You have to have patience to watch the whole TV show. All these people have never seen it, so they blend it all together. You got to realize Bischoff. Okay, Ted Turner. He owned it. He gave Eric Bischoff all the power to be creative, and Bischoff changed wrestling. And he changed before that. You didn't have any of that stuff.
No.
Okay, and so then what happened was they were killing WWF in the ratings, right? Then all of a sudden, when WWF started copying everything, copying off ECW, copying off their, DX is the ripoff of the NWO. It's the leftovers of the Clique. Shawn and Nash were the Clique. Shawn stayed behind in WWF and didn't go because Vince was giving him everything and sucking his dick at the time. And Shawn was very, and Triple H rode the coattails of them.
Yeah, that's another
topic
that we will get to one day.
Okay, and so what happened was the suits that when Ted Turner merged with AOL Time Warner and all that and merged up. They owned it, not him anymore, and they didn't want wrestling on their network.
And he lost full ratings.
And they were never watching the TV show. They only saw that Bischoff's ratings were winning. So once they evened it, they weren't happy with that. They're like, that's not good enough because and Bischoff, people don't realize he had to go and deal with all these suits. Vince McMahon doesn't have to do that in his company because he owns it. Bischoff had to work with all these people that never watched his show, never knew anything about wrestling. They were just these accountants and all these.
Really, it was an unfair fight.
It was yeah.
Because it was like.
He was
like, nobody's going to tell you no because it's your company. They could tell me no, it's not mine.
Yeah, Bischoff was on TNT, TBS, all owned by them, and he wasn't allowed to do half the shit. That was like, think of Looney Tunes and cartoon. You know what I mean? People don't understand these little details. So he started the formula that Vince copied and people say did better because he wasn't allowed to do half the shit anymore, and eventually he walked out on them because they wouldn't let him do anything. They never even watched the product. So then they bring in Vince Russo, who is the writer for the WWF, who wrote Austin's material. He did a lot of, he made DX. He was a great writer for them. Goldust, all that shit that brought them back with his crash TV and his randomness. So Vince said, fuck it, we're going to copy them now. And Russo, all right, start writing this stuff.
I seriously I know this is like cynical, like anti-WWE bullshit, but I seriously think it's an inside job.
We don't know.
I seriously think
I don't know. We don't know.
I think that.
A lot of people think that.
I think that
it seems too convenient.
He came in, we can't write all of a sudden, but then he goes...
But in WWE, he was,
He's a brilliant writer in WWF, but all of a sudden, he can't write. And then you look at his shit in TNA, okay, buddy.
He can write it. And
all of a sudden, he can write again?
He was the writer in 02 for WWF.
Alright. He came to WCW just to ruin it and come back and I can write now.
And the thing is, people look at 2000 WCW because the standard was so high then where everything had to be perfect. And they look at it as so bad. But if you look at it now and for how boring WWE has been the last 11 years with nothing, it looks good in perspective of the time periods. You gotta remember, WCW's ratings in 2000 are higher than now. WWE because...
dude, if you think it's 2014.
That's bad. Like 12 years of nothing.
Bad for 12 years.
12 years of WWE not doing
Hell,
anything.
if you want to be picky, it's been shitty for 14 years. 13.
Well, 2001 doesn't count. It's crap because WCW was out in April. And WCW was out in January. And what did they do? They botched the invasion because of Vince's ego, where he didn't want any of the WCW guys to look good.
That's another topic.
We'll get into that. I don't want to get into it. That's
but like in 02, like I don't think it's that great.
It's not. It's okay. But guess what? Isn't it ironic that Vince McMahon used all WCW's talent that they made after 01? Booker T, he brought the NWO back. Goldberg in 03. He uses all WCW talent, not his own, because he can't build anyone. Anytime he ever gets big, is when he puts himself in all the storylines as the main heel to feed his... You notice? It's Vince versus Stephanie McMahon. Vince versus Zach Allen, the kid with the one leg. Yeah. Vince versus Hogan. Vince versus Brett. He puts himself in every... How come that's not...
Michaels.
How come he can put himself in every Mania storyline, every WrestleMania storyline, every major show, and no one ever says that's crap? That's not the show. That's not him pushing anyone.
No,
they say WCW never. What is he? He isn't pushing.
Dude, that's
he just puts himself in everything.
That's a sign of a total psychopath.
Yeah.
Honestly, your ego is that big to where it doesn't count unless it's about me.
Yeah. Hey, how about ECW in 06? Not only did he ruin WCW in 01.
That's another one.
That's another topic that we're going to get into.
We got a lot of topics. Vinnie Mac?
Yeah. And so that's not fair to say because he doesn't push anyone either. Anytime he ever gets ratings now is when he brings back The Undertaker once a year, The Rock, who's not on the roster, Stone Cold, all these guys, like they're not current stars.
And I know.
Daniel Bryan's the only star he made in 12 years.
I know. And Daniel Bryan, made himself.
Yeah,
The
just
fans
by
made
being
him.
the fans made him.
He's Bret Hart.
Yeah, he's their new, no, he's their new Mick Foley, actually.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
And they made John Cena, but John Cena's just that marketing bullshit kid thing like Hogan in the 80s.
Yeah.
You know, oh, never give up. You know what I mean? He was shoved down your throat.
Hustle, loyalty, respect.
He's their Hogan. Yeah, but that's it. Besides, they don't make, but he's not on the stature of a Hogan or an Austin or they can't make any new stars because no one watched the product because it's horrible. And that's just proof right there that.
And even if you could build them, how are you gonna build them? With who?
And look at
They build these guys with people who aren't even on the roster. That's a joke.
Yeah,
That's a
because he doesn't have.
That's a disaster.
How come everyone shits on Russo in 2000, but WWE could do nothing ever? And it's okay. That's not fair. That's why I'm saying all this. I'm not being biased, but look at the facts. Look at the last since 2005. What was every WrestleMania main event? John Cena versus Bradshaw. John Cena versus Triple H. John Cena versus
It's
just like
Hulkamania.
yeah, just the same shit. And no storylines. There's no show.
Oh, they got John Cena versus Randy Orton. John Cena versus Triple H.
So how's that building anyone? Nobody gets any other time. There's no. So it's the same thing. That's not,
Oh, and then the last 2 years, John Cena versus The Rock.
And so what I wanted to end this with is what I was saying is, so Bischoff walked out because he wasn't allowed to do anything anymore, and his hands were tied, and because they sold, and it wasn't wrestling people didn't own it, and he wasn't allowed to do anything. That's not fair, and people don't realize that part. Okay? So, and then they brought in Russo, and then when Russo didn't help, they brought Bischoff back and had to admit, hey, he's the one who made us. And so they had them two work together, and that's why they did the Millionaire Club and the New Blood. So what are you talking about? They weren't building guys. What do you think all that New Blood and all that shit was? That was building all the new.
That was
so
like
there's all these misconceptions from people who never watched it.
The guys that they built, the guys that they're building in the 70s and 80s, right?
Yeah.
Were the main guys.
They're the Millionaires Club. Get it, the Millionaires, Ric Flair, and then they made the New Blood.
And then the Eddie Guerreros were gonna be the new,
like Kidman and all the guys that were.
And then a lot of the guys that were bringing up in the power plant were the new young guys that were. It was just a cycle of never ending
Yeah. So they say they didn't bring anyone up to main events. Well, of course,
not in 2 seconds. But,
but if you're doing year-long storylines like a drama show, how are you gonna get everybody up in one? That's not fair to judge.
I'm like, of course you can get your Goldbergs or something to squeak in there and get up there quick, but you can't do that.
But that was because the storyline.
You can't make everybody a badass killing machine.
Yeah, that was one storyline. There was one guy. Now.
And the reason why it worked. It's because he has no ties to anything else.
Yeah.
He's fresh.
Yeah.
He's new. He's not a Kevin Nash where he was in the NWO.
Yeah.
He's the onher guy with clean hands.
That was very good.
That's the only reason why it worked.
And they were getting everyone. Do you think Jericho getting all that airtime wasn't
the only guy with clean hands worked.
They were all gonna get.
I'm not saying I'm not a Goldberg fan or anything, but I'm just saying facts are facts.
Here's what happens with WCW. You have all the people who never seen it, they don't know anything now, watching all the DVDs now. They don't. You know
what they need to do?
They need to
sell Nitro complete series.
So here's what happened. Okay, so. People don't realize that there's the 4 eras of WCW. You have the pre-Bischoff era.
The
Bischoff era from 95 to 99. Then you have just Russo. When Bischoff walked out, Russo was doing all that stupid shit. Not Bischoff.
It didn't take him long to ruin it.
No, Bischoff built up this great thing and then everyone's like, oh, the NWO never went away because there's an NWO 2000. Guess what? That was not Bischoff's plan. Russo dragged it up by putting Bret Hart and Jeff Jarrett in that NWO. That was not Bischoff. Russo took what Bischoff did and fucked with it and ruined the whole thing. And that's what people don't realize.
I told you, dude.
See? So you can't blame Bischoff for WCW. They're not one thing like Vince's, okay? So then you have the next one where it's Bischoff and
you're dealing with
a lot of bullshit.
See, with Vince you're dealing with it's
whatever I say goes.
When you're dealing with the WCW, you're dealing with more of a ladder.
Yeah.
Of it's the same thing with TNA. You're dealing with shareholders. I own 25% of the company.
No one could get along when there's not one initial owner. Yeah. But that's not Bischoff's fault.
That's just how it works.
WCW is clearly the more creative show. Okay, and Vince just happens to own it, so he's around today. WCW did not go out of business. When Ted Turner sold WCW to AOL Time Warner, They didn't want wrestling on their channels anymore.
How is a billion-dollar
company company does not go out of business.
You always have money. If you're $1 billion, you're set for life.
Yeah, you can't go out of business.
Be poor.
But everyone says, because Vince did that storyline in 01. Remember, he said, I killed WCW. That was the storyline.
Well, no, she's going to say it on a storyline because he's going for
his
big
ego
dickhead thing.
Yeah.
It's not like he didn't kill
But
nothing.
people actually believe that when it's TV show. That's character.
How come? No, that's not, like, how come, like...
How come Eric Bischoff could play a bad guy on TV, but Vince really is that scumbag?
No, here's what I'm getting.
Like,
Eric Bischoff can play a bad guy on TV. Vince can play a bad guy on TV. But when the camera's off, Vince is apparently a nice guy, and Bischoff's still an asshole.
Yeah.
No matter what. But he's really
Vince
not.
McMahon, everybody knows this. It's proof. You can look up Jimmy Cornette saying he used fucking over Brett to build his heel thing. He fucked over a guy for real to get credibility as a bad guy. That's pretty fucked up, and he is.
That's deranged.
A piece of Okay, so then what happened was at WCW.
They merged first of all.
They're getting ready to get rid of it, and they're like, we're gonna sell for nothing. We just want to get rid of it. They never even watched the product ever. So what'd they do? Eric Bischoff he talks about how he wanted to buy it.
He offered to buy
he was the guy. It was like his baby.
Didn't they sell it to Vince for cheaper than Bischoff was offering?
Yeah, because they didn't want him to have it. Because when Bischoff was when he was Turner's boy, when Turner was out running it, they didn't like him because he didn't wear the suit. He wore a leather jacket. He wasn't a scumbag.
See, so they rather not make money on it than
they just want to get rid of him. They hated Bischoff for when he was walking around in power without the suit, and they're dickheads, and they purposely sold it to Vince for nothing, and then people think it went out and he bought it. No, they just pulled the plug on it, and then
they sold the name and shit.
They sold Vince the name and
They sold him the name
and the footage.
So that's why he's able to. That's why he's able to go on TV and put WCW shit on.
Yeah, and then manipulate how he wants to tell the story.
Because if they didn't do that, he would not. He'd be getting sued out of his fucking ass for having the rise and the fall of WCW.
But not only that, it's just. It's just ridiculous. It's just so stupid. He wouldn't have anything without them. He makes money. Look at how he had to. Remember how ECW was so popular that in 06 he had to bring it back by popular demand.
Here's what basically
But
happened.
I want to get into that on another topic. Let's just end this.
Let's end this.
This
is
is
probably
the
half
truth
hour
that
or something. 40 minutes.
So that breaks that misconception of WCW didn't build anyone.
We're at 37 minutes.
All right, I was gonna say 36. Okay.
Well, I'm signing off.
And that's
proven
false.